The new Hollywood biopic Harriet offers audiences a realistic heroine and a holy and powerful God. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. This is Breakpoint. Sometimes it stings like a slap in the face. That's how Araminta Tubman, best known as Harriet, describes hearing the voice of God in the new Focus Features movie, Harriet. The film follows Tubman, the Underground Railroad's most famous conductor, who, after escaping to freedom herself, returned again and again in order to bring other slaves to freedom. This is the latest of the sweeping trend filling theaters with biographies of interesting and important historical figures. But unlike many of the other biopics on offer, this heroine is famous not for pop star talent or mass appeal, but because of what she did for so many others. Nor did she succeed by merely overcoming great odds or relying on her own inner strength. As the film makes quite clear, Tubman's reliance on God gave her the great strength and helped her overcome the greatest of odds. In a time when far tamer references to faith, prayer, or God can be cause for cultural cancellation, I'm so thankful that the producers of Harriet featured that part of her life story from the very beginning of the movie to the very end. But even so, the film does not picture God as some sort of weird crutch or wish-granting genie. The movie also manages to avoid to picture faith in any way that resembles the prosperity gospel. Though Tubman prays audibly to God and expects God to answer, he doesn't always do so in the way she wants or expects. After her own harrowing and unlikely escape early on in the film, Tubman believes God wants her to rescue her husband. She's horrified when she returns to the South to discover that he's now married to another woman. She comes to believe instead he sent her back for the sake of others. Later on in the film, Tubman's confused and desperate when her sister refuses to be rescued. She prays for relief, but it doesn't always come. God speaks to her, sometimes with comfort, sometimes like a slap. Now, while some critics think this depiction of the Christian God looks too much like mysticism, I'd suggest the film portrays her relationship with God in a way that's nuanced, complicated, and realistic. And we can also be thankful that Harriet's screenwriters didn't turn her into some cliched female superhero. Certainly, Tubman's achievements defy belief. She personally led 70 slaves to freedom. She served as a spy for the Union Army. She led an armed battalion during the Civil War. And still, Harriet's producers chose to portray her in a beautifully human way. She doesn't deliver pithy, vengeful one-liners even when she confronts her former slave keeper. She's not some heroine who's unusually strong or powerful or clever. She simply had the courage to obey God, a God who sometimes confused her. There's not a lot more inspiring than that. Tubman's story reminds us that self-sacrifice, even if impractical, has great value. Every single return trip she made to the South was, in any practical sense, a terrible idea. She was likely to fail. But thank God that after tasting freedom in Philadelphia, she didn't count her own comfort as something to be grasped. She had suffered so greatly, her freedom, once she found it, had to be shared. All followers of Christ should feel that same urgency when we remember what the cross has done for us. Now, some critics have noted with disdain the movie's lack of violence. That only makes me wonder how much violence we actually want. Make no mistake, there's plenty of violence in the film, at a level that could be too much for preteens. On the other hand, given the nature of the subject, the filmmakers could have gone a lot further. I'm glad that they didn't. I took 2 of my daughters to see the film, the youngest of which is 12. She's a mature 12, and I'd say this was as intense of a movie as she's ever seen. The movie's rated PG-13 for 3 instances of profanity and for many racial epithets, which is to be expected in a movie that deals with slavery. Still, I was grateful for an opportunity like this to confront the sins of our nation's past with my daughters, while also being reminded that God is still at work in the darkest of times through real people. Hollywood is an unlikely place to find a representation of a good, complicated God. But then again, Tubman was an unlikely hero. Thank God he accomplishes the unlikely through the unlikely. For Breakpoint, I'm John Stonestreet.